Welcome back everyone. I hope we all are charged up for our last session of the day, which is a roundtable discussion on the topic Globalization of Law and its impact on the cross-border transaction. To throw some lights on, I would like to call upon stage Bijan Brahmbhatt, Senior Corporate Counsel, Precision Drilling Corporation. Raghvendra Verma, Group Head Legal Compliance and Company Secretary, ISON. Vasanthan Baskaran, Founder and Managing Partner, Head Legal, Vasanthan Baskaran, Attorneys at Law. Dr. Lalit Bhasin, President, Society of Indian Law Firms.
So thank you everybody. So this session topic is globalization of the law and its impact in the cross-border transaction. So before starting the topic, I request my esteemed panelists to introduce themselves. I will start with Sir Bhasin sir. He don't need the introduction, but I request you sir just okay.
Hey, hello, good evening to one and all. I am Vasanthan Baskaran from India. Basically, I run a law firm in southern part of India, headed in southern part of India, which is called as Chennai. And we have our branches in Delhi, Bangalore, and which is called as Silicon Valley of India. And our specialization is that we practice in all areas of law, and specifically my forte is commercial arbitration and real estates. And then I leave it to the next member of our podium. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bijan Brahmbhatt. I'm a Senior Corporate Counsel for Precision Drilling. We are in oil and gas sector. I've been in this region for almost 8 years now, and as part of my work, I've been dealing with issues across the region, and in my previous role in another company across Southeast Asia and Africa as well. So in terms of the topic relevancy, I hope to bring some relevant insights here. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me here, LexTalk.
Thanks dear.
Your own introduction.
Yeah, yes. So myself is Raghvendra Verma. I am the Chief Legal Compliance and Risk Officer of a company, ISON. ISON is into the three sector, ISON technology, ISON experiences, and we are spread around 39-40 countries across Africa, India and the Middle East. So this is the brief introduction. So today topic, the globalization. So first we need to globalization of the law. So need to understand what is the globalization and how this translates to the globalization of the law. So we can say that integration of the world culture, economy and infrastructure through transnational investment, rapid development of communication and information technology, and the impact of free market forces on the local, regional and national economies, we can call it as the globalization. And economic globalization has a great influence on the legal system because globalization demands the globalization of the law. So what is the meaning of the globalization of the law? It refers to the process of integrating legal system and principles across national boundaries in response to the increasing interconnected economy, society, legal framework worldwide. It involves the recognition of the common legal principle, the harmonization of the law and the development of the international legal framework to address legal challenges and the facilitate cross-border activities. So on the backdrop of this, I request Bhasin sir, so can you please highlight, can you point that what are the key driver and catalyst behind the globalization of the law and how they have shaped the current legal landscape?
You have asked the wrong person to start, but in any case, because I don't understand the topic, it is globalization of law. Now, how can law be globalized, you see? each and every country is a sovereign country. They have their own respective laws which govern, you see, their, whether it is commerce, it is industry, all relations. So there cannot be, in my opinion, humble opinion, any globalization of law. Means that you have a uniformity of law which should be applicable across the borders. It cannot be. What we should be looking forward is globalization.
Correct.
That is global plus localization. Global issues, global concerns, then how those could be put into action locally in that jurisdiction by legislation, by administrative action. Therefore, my, you see, humble opinion is that there is no such thing as globalization of law. There can never be one law which will govern.
100%.
Therefore, it is globalization. And then the second part, you see, is how does it impact the transaction, international transactions and all that.
Yes.
International transactions, the transaction is a very wide word. Actually, it should have been investments. International transactions are going on. Even in India, you have collaborations, you have transfer of technology agreements, you have mergers and acquisitions. All those transactions are going on. Therefore, it has no connection, globalization of law has no connection at all with laws which are applicable to international global transactions. Transactions have been taking place, not now, ever since we got independence, but within the framework of respective laws of the countries. So that is my opening comment.
Thanks, sir. Thank you very much. As sir rightly said, that trade and commerce is not the new things, it's going for the time immemorial, since the time of the humanity on the earth. So Mr. Baskaran, what sir said, I'm taking ahead with that. How has the globalization of the law impacted cross-border transaction and international trade? What are the key benefits and challenges?
See, to slightly differ on the point of what sir has said, but at the same time agreeing on in principle as to how globalization as such cannot be possible in law. But we have to see the nature of the economics that we all operate in, because historically globalization is a word that is being trended these days in the modern world, but historically speaking, trade and mutual commerce is the birthplace of the globalized economy, and time immemorial, like how you said, since when ships and transportation of goods were invented, globalization is the way of the order of how commerce operated. And today, when looking at the modern context in which it has developed, I would say globalization has opened up economies, has broken up barriers in all the world, throughout the world. And that being said, the biggest of companies, biggest of corporations have taken critical advantage of that open economy and open market to totally use it in their favor. And because of that, the new rules and regulations that needs to be put in place in this modern governance has evolved in such a way that the governments of various nations have seriously are looking into how this tremendous change in the very recent time has drastically occurred. So that is the impact that the globalization has put all over the world, that it is inevitable to avoid for the governments to look at trade and commerce in a globalized manner. See, people across the world use products and services that are world standard. Say for example, every nation uses a very big mobile phones that belong to very big companies that are not a national, the so-called national or domestic manufacturers. And world-class products are being produced by an American multinational or a Korean or a Japanese corporation. And all those products reach the inner part of any nation to its village, or people who, the consumers, those are interested in it. So the impact of globalization is right now is so intense that the market has opened itself and the barriers have been broken, and inevitably the governments and regulators as such are looking at it and have looked at it, like nations like Dubai or elsewhere, who have been key players in adapting themselves to the global need and necessities. And coming to the second part of the question of what are the key benefits of globalization and what are the other challenges involved in it. See, I would say from the limited practice that I have been involved with in the international trade and commerce, and also the involved in various type of work nature, I would say that the pros of it is that you engage yourself with a culturally diversified human resource, and the advantages are that immense amount of talent is available, and you get to work with those kind of people, and you have access to a greater resource, greater quality resource. And for example, to say from an Indian perspective, so while coming from where I come from, so India is as such has been very rigid in terms of opening to a world commerce, as such, meaning in the field of legal profession. So the act as such in India restricts a lawyer, a foreign law firm, to come and practice in India. It was before, quite a few months before that was the rule of the day. But after the intervention of Supreme Court, Supreme Court of India, there is now a considerable amount of permission that is being given to foreign law firms to come and have a practice in India. Saying that, being that so, it is not the new thing that has been happening there. Even in the time of 1960s, when firms like White and Case or Oxcund in UK has tried to tap the market of Indian legal profession in a global way, there have been so much of protests from the legal fraternity of Indian lawyers who thought that it will be going against their fundamental right of professing that particular profession because of the competition that is involved. But today, when you see that the government and the courts have changed their views of how they are supportive to even the other talents that they, irrespective of the racial or national discrimination, they are being allowed to come in and exploit the real talent that is out there for delivery of the quality service. So I feel that the pros of it are these: the cultural advantage that you have a cultural diversified group of new talents that you can, and also the resources that are involved, and of course the infrastructure that needs to be developed is one of the challenge. Say in terms of technology, coming in like concepts like Bitcoin and blockchain, this is an era where lawyers have to up the game, the legal profession have to up the game, and as such in the cross-border transaction, I would say that it has already gone to a new level, that the globalization of law is a little lapsed than what the actual world in terms of technology is on the pace with.
I would just like to interject with your permission. Yes, sir. I think there is a very grave misconception, as my learned friend here said, that Supreme Court has said. Rather, these rules which have been framed by the Bar Council of India are totally against the ruling of the Supreme Court delivered in 2018 in the case of Bar Council of India versus Balaji, which had arisen as a result of judgment of Madras High Court. Madras High Court held that only Indian citizens can practice law in India. Two exceptions were made, or two concessions were made, that fly in, fly out is permissible. You come, advise your client, you go back and all that. They say that is allowed. And they said in arbitration matters, lawyers can come and appear and go back. The Bar Council of India challenged this, even this concession, in the Supreme Court. And Supreme Court said, affirming the judgment of Madras High Court, only Indian citizens can practice law. And they defined what is practice of law. It is not just litigation. All transactional work, all corporate work, all advisory work, that is also practice of law. And Supreme Court very clearly said that even permitting foreign lawyers to practice their jurisdiction's law, even that is not permissible. So this has been held by Supreme Court, which judgment stands till today. We, on behalf of the Society of Law Firms, had represented to the government that please amend the law. You make a provision in the Advocates Act that even foreign lawyers under certain rules and regulations can come and practice in India, reciprocity and all those concerns. So that has not been done. The position as it stands today is that foreign lawyers cannot practice despite these rules because they fly, you see, against the judgment which is in place, and without amendment of law it cannot take place.
Yeah, rightly said.
My learned friend has referred to the liberalization. Liberalization is different from globalization. And the topic here is globalization of law. Can there be globalization of law? That is the question here. And what is the impact on cross-border investments, you see? Sorry.
No, slightly to add on to it. So what Sir has said, and it's the exact premises in which now we see how the game up must be done. Like especially we are not talking about India. When for a reference point, if we take India, the Advocates Act 1961 per se, the provisions 24 and 33, which exactly what the Supreme Court is right now contesting with, and put in place now, we see in a larger context where the world rests. As such, rightly said by a senior, where there cannot be a unification of a uniform law, because countries differ, cultures differ. But as far as trade and concept of commerce is concerned, it is one and the same, to address the demand by providing a proper supply wherein you make a profit. So
very interesting discussion right now. The one school of thoughts, that is the respected side is saying that there cannot be globalization of law. Other school of thoughts that saying that there is a possibility, like the trade commerce is going to international, crossing the international border, there is a need of harmonization of the law, and like WTO is doing some standardization of the contracts, free trade agreements, WIPO from the intellectual property right point of view. So International Court of Arbitration or something like that for taking care of the somehow trying to globalize the law, but still law is very local. So in the backdrop of you, if you want to add something what Mr. Bhasin has said?
Well, I'll just kind of present a slightly different perspective to this. I guess to start with, I'll quote Thomas Friedman, who is a 3-time Pulitzer Prize winner. And he says, world is flat. And now why I have to quote him is, the globalization or globalization of law is not an isolated event. It is, a multidisciplinary activity, right? So there is an aspect of economy, there is aspect of legal systems, and of course there is also public international law. Now all these different forces, when they come together and there is a confluence of these 3 or 4 various devising forces, that's when we get presented with various challenges that Bhasin sir and Vasant were discussing. So when we say world is flat, it supposes that there is a level playing field. Now the core idea of globalization of law is that regardless of where you are carrying out economic activity or business, we will have an equal opportunity to pursue it in any place where there will be uniform laws that will govern it. So for example, if I am carrying out business in country A, I am subjected to the same treatment, same laws and regulations. And if anybody else is carrying out the business in another country, they should have the same treatment. So that is the very premise of, the advocates for globalization of law say that, look, we need to set up a level playing field, and that's where Thomas Friedman in his economics treatise says that the world is flat, there should be no barriers, everybody should have the same access, same level playing field. Now in that context, I would basically say that I guess as far as the legal profession is concerned, okay, before going to the legal profession, I guess there have been multiple attempts and to large extent they have succeeded for the globalization of law. Now if you take for an example WIPO, now world is operating under, or most countries have accepted TRIPS, trade related aspects of intellectual property. There is a UN law of sale of goods. They've all been kind of harmonized, and all the nation states have kind of internalized those regulations as a local laws. So to some extent there is a lot of attempt as far as the trade and commerce is concerned. There is an attempt at globalizing the law so that businesses can operate across the borders and they can expect the similar treatment from various governments. So that is aspect one. Now as far as the matters of public policies are concerned, that cannot be, as Bhasin sir pointed out, there can never be a globalized law because each state will have their own, let's just put it where it's a matter of state policy. One country can decide what it wants to criminalize and the other country will not want it to criminalize. So we need to kind of accept that of course there are differences, but there have been attempts, and I guess that will only grow from there. Now taxation is another aspect. Now if you pick for an example IFRS, right? GAP standards, all those matters that have been, world over, every country is adopting the same, the generally accepted accounting principles, IFRS standards. That's another attempt at introducing laws and regulations which are, I would call it as a globalized in nature, so uniformity. So I guess we are getting there, but of course it's a gray area, and it's a multidisciplinary, multifaceted subject. It's not just law, it's law, economics, part of sociology as well, and of course there is geopolitics and diplomacy.
Very aptly put. So you are saying basically it can divide the law into 3 parts. One is the commerce and economic, trade and commerce, and one is the private and the aspect of the law, the other last one is the public aspect of law. Public aspect of law, that public law cannot be globalized because that is very, very centric to the government and public policy. But as far as that contact between 2 bodies is concerned, that can be globalized, and there can be a standard contract, like in the, we can see that the World Trade Organization has come with that a standard contract template. For the data privacy point of view, if you see that the GDPR has some defined contractual clause that we can put into the data privacy contract or something like that. So on and so forth. So some anti-money laundering, we can say that there is anti-bribery, that is also the standard practice is coming from US, and every country is adopting the same thing.
No, you are absolutely right. And Mr. Brahmbhatt also rightly pointed out the difference, you see, the public international law and how these transactions, and in the passing you had in your opening remarks made a reference to FTA.
Yes.
Now instead of globalization, you see what is gaining strength is FTAs, particularly speaking for India. India is deeply focused on signing FTAs with different countries. So that will be virtually the law which will govern the trade and commerce relation between the 2 countries. We have signed with UK, we have signed with Australia, we have signed with UAE,
last year,
you
yes,
see,
sir.
and also so many other jurisdictions. Therefore, in a way, that I don't call it globalization, but it is liberalization of trade and commerce rules and regulations, what will govern, and that even supersedes the law. You see, it has been held by Supreme Court that these conventions or these agreements, they are sacrosanct. Therefore, we are in a way already moving towards improving trade and commerce, but through the means of FTAs.
FTA. Last year, Dubai and India did that. That. So there is a regional bloc is being built like APEC or GCC and SARC or something like that. We have, so because of European Union has standardized their contract. So, so this regional bloc is being made for globalization or liberalization of the law. So taking forward, Mr. Bijan, what are the key considerations for the business and individuals when operating in the globalized legal landscape? Why I am saying that myself, I am taking the legal head of the, and my operation, my company is incorporated in 39 countries, and in-country law is very, very different from others. So what key consideration to take care and how to navigate the diverse legal system and regulatory framework?
Sure. Well, so to start with, we have not attained an absolute globalization of law yet, right?
Absolutely.
What that implies is there exists diversification, which means laws of country A will differ from country B. So when we are operating across multiple jurisdictions, which I guess all of us here will do, we have to be mindful that the differences are bound to exist. What that brings, and I'm now sharing my own experience, is be ready for surprises, right? So to the extent we know that we have a lot of large organizations will have in-country manuals or manual for entering a new country, where you assess all the risks, whether it's legal, commercial, financial, geopolitical risks. No matter of how much of due diligence will you do, there will be surprises when you will get down to fold your sleeves and get down to setting up an entity or obtain local registration and licenses. There will be surprises. So in terms of navigating it, so be prepared for surprises. Number two, local know-how is extremely important. Now, I will have incorporated an entity, started a whole new business in one country. I may have faced certain challenges, and I would think, okay, the neighboring country shares the same history, all cultural nuances, political system, legal system, so it should be identical. Absolutely not. There is going to be some more hiccups that was not faced in the previous experience, right? So be prepared for deviations, and for that purpose, absolutely local know-how is very important. So for me, I will want to have an external counsel in that particular place who has spent zillion years practicing that, so that I can have a very reliable legal advice that I can use to carry about my usual business. The third is, I would say, no matter all the homework and hard work we'll do, there will be challenges. So be always prepared to face, get on with the challenges, and whether it's having a recourse to the court of law, let's say get a business license to start your new manufacturing unit in one country, but for some reason it's not being allowed by any of the government agencies. So to know what remedies you have in place, right? So we have remedy to approach court of law, whether there's a constitutional remedy that exists that you can go and challenge decision of a government. So before, from the get-go, do your homework, get ready, that assume the worst, and be prepared from the legal point of view. For me to tell my business and management that these are the remedies. If we don't hit the ground by so and so date, this is what we have got to do. So these are the few things I would say that as a global business we have to be ready in absence of a harmonized globalized law at this point.
So basically you are saying that you need to hire the local lawyer to understand the nuances of the local jurisdiction law, and so again the third point is getting proved that law is not globalized but liberalized at this point of time. So, sir, like you said that there is no globalization, but still if you see that there is like uniformity of the trade contract, international arbitration forum is coming up, IPR protection, international body is there, they are all forming up. So what are the ethical and the social implication of this transformation, this initiative? And how can legal system ensure the protection of fundamental rights, cultural diversity and national sovereignty in this context?
Yeah, so far India is concerned, our constitutional safeguards are there. In the very preamble, as I said in my opening remarks this morning, we have, among other things, said that we have to secure for our citizens justice, social, economic, political. And with a view to achieve that, our constitution has provided so many remedies to the citizens, and unlike other jurisdictions, there is a right available to an individual under Article 32 for violation of fundamental rights to approach the Supreme Court directly. In no other country you will find this sort of a right being given to the citizen. Therefore, our rights are fully protected, and our rights also include even rights of the foreigners who come and who do business because of the law laid down by the Supreme Court, that agreements, contracts, they need to be interpreted in the spirit in which they have been entered into. Therefore, they should be enforced. Although enforcement of contract is still very lax, so far India is concerned, and execution of even decrees or awards takes a lot of time. But now you see the government is moving towards expediting all these processes and procedures which are being put in place, ease of doing business and all that. So that is itself a protection. When the government is committed to something, that means that they are affording protection to foreign investors also, to Indian investors going outside also. Our FEMA has been liberalized, you see, in so many ways. Therefore, we already see progress being made in the field of trade and commerce, more activity, but it is made more plausible and possible when you have the FTAs. That governs, you see, that FTA is the most important thing. But you may call it that also a part of globalization, because if you have FTAs with about 20 countries, so you are, you see, entering into those arrangements with that.
I'll just add a comment here. And speaking of social and ethical issues, I think the new, the talk of the town is ESG, environment, social and governance issues, right? Now, although at this point there is no uniform framework or a treaty or convention or multilateral agreement amongst any of the countries on these issues about ESG, but I think for any business to operate in a globalized world, these ESG considerations are not to be missed, right? And that's the most important. Yes. But again, I guess what needs to be seen is whether ESG as a topic will become a globalized law in a way.
Not law, globalized issue.
Globalized issue. But are we going to see that United Nations will adopt a convention that will touch upon a lot of issues that we discuss in ESG? And if it does, and then all the member states will adopt it, then actually it will become a globalized law in a bit of loose sense, but it will.
Like in the field of arbitration, you have the UNCITRAL rules, which are universally accepted.
Right.
So it is not a law, but the country adopts that. you see.
Country and at the same and similar, just an extension of it. I think all the conventions for the enforcement of judgments, right?
Yes.
That's definitely a globalized law,
Yeah.
where countries recognize judgments from each other court.
The New York Conventions and
Yes.
all those things.
And I will add on that, very good point you raised about ESG. So Kyoto Protocol has been adopted by many countries, and the countries, the world is working towards to lower the temperature of the earth by 2015 by -1 degree. So this convention are being adopted by the government. So Mr. Sir, again to you. So like this cross-border transaction and the advancement of the technology has raised many concerns to the business, like data breach. Somebody is sitting in India, breaching the data on the internet. The people sitting in the UK and the US or something like that. So this jurisdictional conflict, where to the person whose data is breached is sitting in, for example, said UK, and person who breached the data is sitting in India. So what is the jurisdictional conflict? How to resolve that, and what is the way out here?
You see, so far Indian law is concerned, we always apply in a loose manner where the cause of action has arisen. So cause of action wherever it arises. Now in the field of technology, it's very difficult to say, you see, where the cause of action, from which jurisdiction, whether it is coming from Hong Kong or it is, you see, coming from China or some other place. Then these are the things where the local laws have to prevail and take punitive actions against those who are in breach of that. Therefore, there cannot be, as I said, any common law. There could be, as rightly said by Mr. Brahmbhatt, you see that there could be conventions, protocols, guidelines being laid by the United Nations. Even the International Bar Association has formulated certain guidelines for such events like ESG and all you have pointed out, which have to be then adopted by the governments of different jurisdictions. Only then you can resolve these issues. By simply, you see, supposing we in this conference come out with something, some recommendation, that is meaningless.
Yes.
Our governments have to agree to that and make laws, our parliaments, our legislatures.
Can I add on to?
Yeah, please.
See, adding on to what Sir just said, see, this is a time where technology has taken a lead. Like in the absence of in the absence of a very strict policing by the laws, existing laws, this technology, where thanks to people like Santoshi Namaka, who has proposed the coding for the blockchain in 2009, where these blockchain concepts are so hyper-tech that these are considered to be very secured network. Even when, for instance, a country like GCC countries, when Dubai even proposed and promoted the concept of Bitcoin, the networks which were used were blockchains, which have basically a structured and a more secure way of doing these transactions. So the entire concept of doing business today is inevitably is merged with the technological development, and I think the advantage of the secured high value technology must also be introduced while having a parallelly effective governance of the rules and regulations like how it was proposed.
Thanks, Mr. Bhaskaran. So, you talked about technology. So, what role technology and digitalization play in the globalization of the law, like AI, blockchain, data analytics, how they are shaping the future of the cross-border transaction? Can you highlight something?
Sure.
I think it starts with the fact that the technology, whether it's AI, machine learning, or any other new developments that will come in future, they're all double-edged swords. It's going to help us, but it is also going to present a lot of threats and adversarial environments where we'll have to kind of accustom ourselves to coexist. Now, I think in the previous sessions today we've heard a lot about AI, machine learning and stuff. So I think law and AI or law and technology are on two polar ends, and why I say this is because the fundamental notion of law is it's considered as a tool of social engineering, right? So it presupposes that it involves people. Law actually governs interactions and transactions between people. Now we have now developed a technology which is people-less, which is artificial intelligence, which a machine is supposed to crunch some data and behave in a certain way and come up with things which we humans will not be able to. So in that sense, law and technology in current times are on two polar ends. Now, what needs to happen is there has to be a convergence which can happen, and there was a debate in the other room, I believe, about whether we should regulate AI or we should not regulate AI, right? We should regulate blockchain, we should not regulate blockchain. So when speaking of technology, of course, we got to tread very carefully, understanding that there are hidden risks, dangers, because some people will exploit it, right? And use those laws. Maybe we have to come up with new laws to deal with those scenarios, but I guess we have to make use of it. We have to come up with ways where it is more useful. For example, I think somebody in the earlier panel said that now there are softwares where the system negotiates an agreement between two parties. So there is no human input, but two parties put something in the system, and some basic agreements like NDAs can be negotiated by a software without much of human input. But the point being that this is all going to be there, right? So how we adopt and imbibe them in our current workflows, right? How business systems work, how current workflows happen. But of course, I believe there is no dispensation for human intervention.
You see, in the field of law, artificial intelligence can only act as a facilitator.
Absolutely.
As I said earlier in one of the sessions, that our Chief Justice of India has made repeated statements that we are trying to digitize, the working, we are having these virtual hearings and all that, and e-filing. So I told him one day, I say, you are facilitating the filing of the petitions. What about the disposal? If there are more filings and less disposal, it will add to those 5 crore cases which are pending in India at the moment. And artificial intelligence can never be a substitute for the human touch, the human brain, because in law you are in litigation particularly, or in arbitration, you are giving out facts. Each case has to be decided on its merits based on the facts which are there. There can't be any general application which possibly AI may say, okay, if you have this situation, this can be possible. But you have to go deep into the factual position and then decide. And that can only be decided, by the human mind, by the human brain.
Sir, I exposed to one software application. I was in South Africa, one artificial application, and the one big law firm was using that just in the trial phase. What they used to do, the cases, you are feeding the cases, the decided cases into the system, and after feeding some cases, decided cases, and then the similar new case put into the system, and the probability of the winning or losing the case, AI was telling, it was almost 99.9% correct. So this facilitator that you rightly said, we can use in this way the artificial intelligence.
No, when they feed that, the result will be that it will give you the ratio of the judgment, but the ratio has to be seen in the context of the facts of that case.
Yes, sir.
Therefore, that will be totally misleading.
Misleading or it
Totally
depend on what type of data you are feeding that system.
Yeah, correct.
So now it's very interesting discussion, globalization versus liberalization finally. So we all accept that this era is the globalized era, that trade commerce is global now. Although I was hearing Mr. Guru Murthy that day that he was saying that there is nothing globalized now, everything is going to be nationalized. So, but even that, may I ask Mr. Bhaskaran, how can the legal education, because you know that we are all now old school of thoughts, most of us, and the new trade commerce and the people cross border is going on. How can the legal education and professional development adapt to prepare lawyer for the challenge and opportunity presented by the globalization or liberalization of the law?
See, to jump into that question, I would say today, as I began my entire, the discussion with the resource is open now. So now we have a time where people have access to information. The data is available, but like someone said in today's discussion, there is too much of information that is being dumped out there. So people are not able to find the right information, right resource to get the right amount of required knowledge, that is. So this is where the AI and so much of technologically supported resource systems come into play. Now today in the earlier discussion, one of the the panel member have rightly told that even the system remembers that if you talk ill about it in any of your sessions, say that if you are anti-AI or anti-tech, the system again remembers in the future and it gives back to you. That's what the panelists fondly and joked about it. I would say that this particular way of approaching the knowledge based or an acquiring knowledge system, like say for education, legal education for instance, the resources are abundant, but the data is abundant, but to find the right way is missing. I think the syllabus patterns that people follow must be having an inspired view of how globally recognized legal institutions are running and how the teaching methodology and research methodology are used in the modern world to get the right amount of knowledge supported with the right tech is what I would suggest for enable education in this field for the modern world.
You want to add something?
Well, I believe as far as the lawyers are concerned, we need to get more technological savvy.
Correct.
Times to come to catch up with all the developments. So I would say it wouldn't harm if we add a bit of a technological modules in our course syllabus, and that's something probably the law schools and the colleges should consider. Because we have to live with it, and also we have to probably live against it at the times, and lawyers probably have responsibility to kind of think ahead of time and see what sort of regulations we do need to have. The countries need to have, the states need to have.
Sir, your
Legal
comment.
education is very important, and it is the most neglected one, at least in India, except for certain national law schools and some private law schools like Amity or Symbiosis and Lloyds and all. The legal education, you see, is not meeting the desired goal, and the Bar Council of India is totally sitting on it, you see. I visit 2 law schools all over the country every month at their invitation to have interaction. And I always tell the students there that do your research. Use the tools which are now available, which were not available to us when we were students and when we started our practice. But please remember, use of technology is all right, but there can be no substitute for a law teacher. That is where you will constantly need guidance, mentorship and all that, even how to use the technology and all that. So that is my final take.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. So, any question? Anybody, any question?
This is
Sir,
no question.
so my request, your closing remark, please.
The closing remarks are that such discussions are very fruitful. particularly for the legal professionals, whether they are practicing lawyers or they are general counsel, in-house counsel, or even who are CFOs in company secretaries. These discussions help in developing, you see, the concepts which are emerging every day, which are globalized concepts. So globalized concept, how to be implemented under the local conditions, that is the prime purpose.
Harmonization of the law.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a fantastic topic. We can go on for I guess days and weeks, and I think it's so dynamic and evolving. So I think the base takeaway I take from this discussion is that it's so important to stay on top of it because it's moving so fast. And as lawyers, and speaking professionally, I think it will not harm if we keep up the pace with all the developments. Otherwise, we'll realize we'll kind of be far behind to everybody else.
Yeah. So it's a mind-troubling topic and discussion that we had, and I thank you for moderating the session, and thank the respective senior and the co-panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, audience, and thank really it was privilege to share the stage with Bhasin sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you, LexTalk.